in the election, I feel like and people aren't talking about this enough. There's two battles, right? To every presidential election, there's always two battles. There's the primary, and then there is the actual presidential election between the Democrat nominee and the Republican nominee. But those are two totally different battles because they require different strategies. You're appealing to different people. And what's killing me about Republicans, and I care much more about Republicans right now because of the fact that Joe Biden is not really going to be challenged. Kennedy is challenging him. He's a non-factor. No one's going to really vote for him, not enough at least. And so the Republican primary is really interesting. What I'm having a hard time with Republicans is they seem to believe that the general election after the primary does not matter. They essentially think that whoever wins the Republican primary, there's this general sentiment that Joe Biden is such a bad president that whoever wins the Republican nominee is going to be our president. Like the Republicans have already won, essentially. So the question is, who is going to be the president? And this is just not true. Like, this is so not true. And if there's any indication of this, it is 2022. Because I would have maybe agreed with you in 2021. Like, Joe Biden is an awful president. Afghanistan happened. The economy was in shambles. His handling of COVID was awful. Like, his approval rating was abysmal. It was below 40%, even by 2021. And so I would have agreed with you. But 2022 was a really strong indication that it may not make sense, but people are still going to vote for Biden because there's this general sentiment that anything is better than Trump and the people that he endorses. We saw that with Herschel Walker. We saw that with Mehmet Oz. We saw it with Carrie Lake in Arizona. Blake Masters, we saw it with countless people, all of them endorsed by Trump. Now, there were a few people who were endorsed by Trump that did get elected, but those were in red states that really didn't have, no one really questioned them getting elected in the first place. In purple states, almost everyone lost. Who didn't lose? Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis gained voters, and those voters came from Democrats and independents. So I think that's a really strong and it's a very powerful thing to think about going into 2024. I think to completely neglect and disregard the 2022 election would be a huge mistake for Republicans. It's been said many times, but the art of politics is making it easy for your party to win and hard for the opposition party to win. And so you have to just think to yourself, at this point, it's a two-man race, in my opinion, DeSantis or Trump, right? Like, I think the Republicans have a fabulous lineup. I think Vivek Ramaswamy is awesome, actually. I didn't know anything about him until he started running for president. I started listening to his stuff. I think he's awesome. Is he going to win the nomination? No. Like, he's probably not going to win, He just doesn't have enough name recognition right now. Could he win in 8 years, 4 years? Maybe. Nikki Haley, I think she's great. Tim Scott, awesome. We've got a lot of people that are awesome. But the reality is DeSantis and Trump, the name recognition's up there. They're a lot more tried and true. And it's a two-man race at this point. And so what you have to think is Biden. It's hard to vote for Biden. We already know this. That's why that's the good news for Republicans. It's really hard to vote for Biden. The question is it easy to vote for DeSantis or is it easy to vote for Trump? That's what Republican voters are going to have to decide. In my opinion, if you ask me today, I'd say it's hard to vote for Biden. It's hard to vote for Trump. I would say it's a lot easier to vote for DeSantis. Why do I say that? Because he literally brought 1 million independents and liberals onto his side in 2022. Trump in 2022 cost senators in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona. As a party, it does not make sense, in my opinion, for Republicans to support Trump at this point. But the other thing that's interesting is that in every single poll, Biden, almost every single, I've seen like 2 that are different, but in every single poll, DeSantis beats Biden, Biden beats Trump. And Trump beats DeSantis in the primary. Of course, everyone knows this, right? Like if you make it a two-man race and you take away all the other people, DeSantis gets a lot more support and the polling's a little closer. But Trump in most polls still has at least a 5-point lead. With the other people involved, Trump has a 20-point lead. And so, again, if you're trying to make it easy for you to win, And all the polling is saying that Trump loses to Biden, but DeSantis wins to Biden. Even if you disagree with DeSantis on some level, you have to ask yourself, is it worth risking another 4 years of Biden? It seems crazy to me that anyone would even consider the fact that they would rather have Biden than DeSantis. They'd rather go down with the ship with Trump and lose and have Biden win than lose to DeSantis. There's also this general sentiment on the polling. I know some of you are saying, but it's the polls, we just don't know. Here's my legitimate question for those people, and this is a hard critique of conservatives right now. I mean, you're going to hear me critique liberals, progressives all day long. I gotta give you a critique to the conservatives out there. I hear so much about polls aren't legit. The polling doesn't make sense. What data do you have to combat the polling? Now, I'm not saying the polling's always right. I mean, I think there's a lot of data to show that the polling is still reliable enough. But my question to you is, what is the alternative to polling? Like your personal anecdotes? Everyone I talk to, when I say, yeah, DeSantis has a better, if I say to them, DeSantis has a better shot at beating Biden, they say, well, how do you know that? And I say, well, I mean, the polling suggests that. They'll be like, no. Everyone I talk to says they'd rather vote for Trump than Biden. And you're telling me that off of that knowledge, you think Trump would be a better Republican nominee from your anecdotal conversations with your friends who probably believe similar things to you, because as humans, we tend to gravitate towards people who think the same. Yeah, I'd rather trust, if I'm the Republican Party and my job is to further the interests of conservatives and Republicans, I'm going to bet on the polls a lot more than I'm going to bet on my 10 friends in Alabama. The other thing is, if you hear Trump's message in comparison to DeSantis's, they're total polar opposites. DeSantis's whole core message in that Twitter broadcast was, I am 100% responsible. I'm 100% responsible. I will make this happen. We can't have Biden back in the White House. I will fight for you, and there's no excuses. The left plays these dirty games with election. We saw it in 2020. We saw it in 2022. All Trump supporters, by the way, believe this. I believe it. I don't believe that the election was rigged, personally. Let me rephrase that. I do believe that the election was rigged. I do not believe that the election was stolen, if that makes sense. I do not believe it was fraudulent. It happened the way it was supposed to, but the rules that were in place were rigged. The media was on their side. The the voting laws completely on the left. And so what DeSantis came out and said is, fine, they want to play by those rules. We're going to play by the same rules and we're going to win. That's DeSantis' pitch on why you should vote for him to be the Republican nominee to beat Biden. What's Trump's pitch? Trump's pitch is Ron DeSantis is a meatball, and it's unfair that he's running. It's like a temper tantrum. He's like, it's unfair that he's running against me. I endorse him. This is disloyal. Trump, no one cares. That's like the most childish thing ever. It's politics. Like, no one cares. And never once did DeSantis say, like, I'm ungrateful for that. I did it all on my own. I've never heard DeSantis say something like that. You can run against the person that gave you that endorsement and say, hey, I really appreciate your endorsement. I think you're great. You had a great 4 years, but I think it's time for new blood, and I'd like to come forward. I mean, in my mind, that's what DeSantis is doing. Trump's message is not 100% responsible. Trump's message is, I'm going to have a temper tantrum about Ron DeSantis running, and it's all his fault, and the election was stolen from me. Like, there's no accountability. There's no responsibility there. Do you want a leader like DeSantis who says, I'll take 100% responsibility, or do you want the temper tantrum? I think those are legitimate questions to ask. Now, I'm not saying Trump doesn't have anything to offer. He was a great president for the first 3 years. The last year, not so much. We'll talk about that. I think that was awesome, but you also have to consider the fact that Trump also does have 4 years of presidential experience. I think that's important. You have to consider the fact that Trump really does attack the people that we want to attack. He attacks the elites. He attacks the media. I think that's awesome. He might even do it more than Ron DeSantis. So I'm not saying that he doesn't have anything to offer. I'm just saying, who do you want leading the party against the opposition, which at this point is Joe Biden.